Assalamu alaikum, grade 9s. Today we're going to be learning section 8.2, which is solving equations, but they are going to be two-step equations. They'll look like this or like this, so those two formats. Now, the first thing is that this section, 8.2, was left out of your note package. So you're going to have to go onto Google Classroom or Dropbox and actually download the empty notes if you want to write them down physically. That's the disclaimer here. So what we're going to do with example 1 is we're going to solve two-step equations with fractions. So we're going to be focusing on fractions first. The first one says we have 2x plus 1/10 is equal to 3/5. And we're going to use fractions to solve this. Now, the way that we're going to use fractions to solve this is we are going to look and see that we're doing addition. And whenever we're doing addition or subtraction, we know that we need a common denominator. So that's what we're going to do. So we want to make everything have a common denominator. Right now, we have a denominator of 5, 10, and 2x doesn't have a denominator, but we can make it into a fraction by putting it over 1. So here we have 2x over 1 plus 1/10 equals 3/5. And a common denominator between these three numbers is 10. We can multiply this by 2 to get 10, and we can multiply this by 10 to get 10. Now remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top as well. So let's rewrite this with a common denominator. The first one would be 2x times 10, which would give us 20x over 10, plus 1/10, that just stays the same. And then the next one is over 10, and 3 times 2 is 6. So now that we have them all over 10, we can do our addition. So we can simplify the terms on the left. We can add them together. So 20x plus 1 over 10 is the same thing as just saying 20x plus 1 over 10 equals to 6 over 10. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. You can cross multiply and divide at this point, which is going to take you a lot longer. Or what you can do is say that these 10s, since they're common denominators, we can actually just ignore them and make this 20x plus 1 is equal to 6. Okay, I'm going to show you both ways. So this is the way where you ignore the denominators because they're already set to be the same and just solve the numerators. So once you have a common denominator, just solve the numerator. So 20x plus 1 is equal to 6. Now you do what you did in 8.1 and solve using opposite operations. So you're going to do SAMDEB, which is opposite operations. So you're going to subtract 1 from both sides. This gives you 20x is equal to 5. And then after you're done subtraction, addition, multiplication, division. So 20 times x, the opposite of that is divide by 20. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So x is equal to 5 over 20, and you can reduce that by dividing them both by 5 to get 1 over 4. So x is equal to 1/4. Now let's see if it works the other way. So the other way I said was that you can do cross multiply and divide. So you can only do cross multiply if you have a fraction equaling a fraction. So this is the cross multiply method. Now, cross multiply means that you multiply the numerator of one with the denominator of the other, and then the denominator of one with the numerator of the other, and you make them equal to each other. So let's start with the first one. So the first one's saying 20x plus 1 times 10. This is like what we learned in our last chapter, which, 2 chapters ago, which was a monomial times a binomial. And if we simplify that, 10 times 20 is 200x plus 10, because you have to distribute it to both. And then the second term, the second multiplication is 10 times 6, which is 60. So we're going to just write that as 60. And now we have a new equation here that we can solve using what we learned in 8.1. So the first thing, we're going to do SAMDEB. So both ways, guys, you're going to have to end up doing SAMDEB. So you choose which method you want to use. So we're going to start with any subtraction and addition, which is this plus 10. The opposite is minus 10. Minus 10. Cancel out. This gives you 200x is equal to 50. And now, after the addition and subtraction, you have to do multiplication division. So divide by 200, divide by 200. These cancel. So x is equal to 50 over 200. Now, of course, you can simplify. You can divide them both by 50, which gives you 1 over 4. So in both scenarios, you get that x is equal to 1 over 4. It doesn't matter which method you choose to use. You can choose whichever one works for you. So what I want you to do is try this next one. Pause the video. You choose a method that you like, whether it's the cross multiply and divide method, which you can see it still works, but it does give you a bigger number that you have to reduce. But it definitely still works. So you try either the cross multiply method or the common denominator and eliminate the denominators method. So no matter which method you chose, whether you did the common denominator canceling method or the cross multiply method, for this question, either way you should have gotten a reduced answer of y is equal to 1/8. So you can pause and check how I did it if you did not get that answer. But you're going to ask me, do we have to reduce? Yes, you always have to reduce, you guys. Okay, so the next problem says k over 3 equals k over 3 minus 1/2 equals -1 and 3/4. So the first thing you want to do here is you want to change any mixed fractions into improper, because that will really help you visualize the denominator and will help you to make any changes you need. So you have k over 3 minus 1/2 is equal to negative, and then 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So -7 over 4. The denominator stays the same. So now you have to find a common denominator. And between 3, 2, and 4, I would say the common denominator is 12 between them. So to get the first one to be over 12, we have to multiply by 4. And what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So k times 4 is 4k. Now our next one is 1/2. To get that over 12, we have to do 2 times 6. And what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So 1 times 6 is 6. And then for the last one, to make it over 12, we had to multiply 4 by 3. So equals over 12. 4 times 3 is 12. 7 times 3 is -21. So now we have common denominators. We can solve again using any method we like. So you can ignore all the denominators and rewrite it as 4k minus 6 equals to -21. And then do opposite operations to solve. So plus 6, these cancel. 4k is equal to, so -21 plus 6 is like saying 21 minus 6, right? Because you're canceling out the positives. So that leaves you with -15. And then now after we did the part of SAMDEB, we have to do the multiplication division. So 4 is being multiplied by k, so we do the opposite, which is divide, and that cancels it out. And then you're left with k is equal to -15 over 4. And then you have to check if you can reduce. And in this case, we actually can't. But what you can do is you can change it to mixed if you wanted to. So you can say that it's -3 and 3/4. And that can be your final answer. If you wanted to do it the cross multiplying way, I'll do that over here. So you had 4k minus 6 over 12 equals to negative 21 over 12. So you would cross multiply, but as you can see right here, why is this method not preferred? Because you're going to end up with this huge number of negative 21 times 12. And then you're going to have to reduce it later, and then it's going to become really, it's going to be a long and tedious process. So in this scenario, it's better to do it using this method. The other thing you can do, and before you, if you don't want to do the other method, is before you cross multiply, what you can do is you can simplify the fractions if they can be simplified. So for example, negative 21 over 12 can be reduced to negative 7 over 4 equals to 4k minus 6 over 12. And then you can cross multiply, which makes the numbers a little bit easier to work with. But still, you're going to have to reduce at the end. So you can do 4 times this, and then negative 7 times this, and then do SAMDEV to simplify. So this part here says that we should check our answer. How do we know that our k equals negative 15 over 4 is correct? So let's plug it into this chart, left side, right side. So here, what they mean by left side, right side is the barrier is the equal sign. And we have the left side of the equal sign and a right side of the equal sign. So on the left side, we have k over 3 minus 1/2. And on the right side, we have negative 1 3/4. So let's plug in our value for k and see if this would equal each other in the end. So we said that k was negative 15 over 4. And then that is still over 3 minus 1/2. And that should still equal to negative 1 3/4. Whenever you have a fraction within a fraction, right here, what you need to do is, this is saying negative 15 over 4 divided by 3, which is 3 over 1. You want to do KCF. So keep the first one, change to multiplication, flip the next one, which gives you negative 15 over 12, which you can divide them both by 3 to get negative 5 over 4. So let's rewrite that here, negative 5 over 4 minus 1/2. And now in order to minus these two, you need a common denominator. So let's get this to be over 4. So negative 5 over 4 minus 2 over 4. When you're subtracting integers, you want to do AO. So negative 5 over 4, add the opposite, which is negative 2 over 4. And this gives you negative 7 over 4, which is negative 1 3/4. So then our left side does equal our right side, which means that we did our answer correctly. Okay, so I want you guys to pause this video and try it again. Try doing this, and here we have a mixed number, so remember you have to change it to improper first. So take a minute and try this question. Use the method that you prefer, but it says to solve and check. So you have to draw a table and show that your left side equals your right side. Okay, so this is the answer you should have got, that n is equal to 25 over 4. And if you plugged it in, like you see here on the side, you should have gotten that your left side is equal to your right side. So if you didn't get this answer, please pause again and check how I did the work. I used the method where we cancel out the common denominator and then just solve the numerators. Okay, working example number 2 says solving two-step equations with decimals. So this time we're moving away from fractions, we're dealing with just decimals. So the first one says to solve this equation and then check your answer. Whenever it says to check, that means we're going to have to do a left side equals right side sort of thing. So here you can't use the common denominator method. What you are going to have to use is SAMDEV. Whenever you're trying to solve that means you're trying to find a variable, you always have to use SAMDEP, which is opposite operations. Okay, so reverse the operations, and that will isolate the variable for you. So we have here that a divided by 2.8 minus 2.5 equals to negative 3.7. So we are going to use SAMDEB to do opposite operations. So the first thing is to find any subtraction or addition. So here we are subtracting, we're minusing 2.5. And so the opposite operation of that is to add 2.5. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And by side, I mean side of the equal. So these negative 2.5 and positive 2.5, they cancel each other out. What you're left with is a divided by 2.8 equals, and then negative 3.7 plus 2.5 is, you can use a calculator if you want because it's decimals, but it's basically the same thing as saying 3.7 minus 2.5 because you're canceling out positives and negatives, and that leaves you with negative 1.2. So now we have a divided by 2.8 is equal to negative 1.2. So we did our subtraction and addition. Our next step is to do any multiplication and division. So again, we're doing opposite operations. So is the variable being multiplied or divided by anything? Well, yeah, it's being divided by 2.8. So the opposite of dividing is to multiply by 2.8. That will cancel it out. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So here we have that a is equal to, you can do it on your calculator, negative 3.36. And that's your answer. How do we know if we did it correctly? Well, we can plug it into our chart and see if our left side is equal to our right side. So on our left side of our equal, we have a, which is negative 3.36 over 2.8 minus 2.5. And on the right side, we have negative 3.7. So let's solve and see if these equal to each other. So negative 3.36 divided by 2.8 is equal to negative 1.2. And then we solve to minus 2.5. And then if you subtract them, you get negative 3.7, and that's equal to our right side. So our left side is equal to our right side, which means we did it correctly and our A is correct. All right, so I want you guys to pause the video and try this one out on your own using the same method, okay, which is SAMDEB, to solve the question. Find what h is equal to and then plug it into the table to check your answer. So you should have gotten that h is equal to negative 2.4, and if you plugged it in, the left side should have equaled the right side. If you didn't get this answer, please pause the video and look through my work and see where you went wrong. Okay, our last example together is working example number 3, which is now applying two-step equations with decimals. So whenever you see the word apply, think word problem. That's how you're going to have to apply it. So it says Colin's telephone plan charges 5 cents per minute for long distance calls. And then there's also a monthly fee of $4.95. And then Colin's long distance charges for 1 month were $18.75. So that's how much he actually had to pay at the end of the month. And then it says how many minutes of long distance calls did he make that month? So that's what we're trying to find, which means that the number of minutes should be our variable. Whatever we don't know or whatever we're trying to find needs to be our variable. So using your knowledge from chapter 6, you should be able to come up with an equation for this. Let's think, what here should be a coefficient and what should be a constant? We know the general form for an equation is y is equal to mx plus b. So what is going to go here as the coefficient and what is going to be the thing that stays constant? Well, the 5 cents per minute, that would be our coefficient because it's depending on what you pay depends on how many minutes you talk. So what he pays is equal to 5 cents, which in dollars is 0.05, times the number of minutes, which we don't know. And then his monthly fee, no matter what, is $4.95. That would be our constant. So no matter what, he's paying $4.95. So the money is all in dollars. Okay, so you can't have one of them in cents and one of them in dollars. It doesn't work. So put them both into dollars. So now we have our equation we can actually solve because his price or how much he pays we know was $18.75. So $18.75 is equal to 5 cents per minute plus the $4.95 that the standard he has to pay. Now we have our equation. We can actually use SAMDEB to solve for our missing variable. So it's flipped this time. This time the variable's on the right and the answer's on the left. It doesn't matter. We have a left side and a right side. We can still solve. So we're going to solve using SAMDEB, or in other words, opposite operations. So the first thing we're going to do is any subtraction and addition, which is right here. So we're going to do the opposite. So minus 4.95 minus 4.95. What you do to one side, you do to the other. This leaves us on the left with 0.05 m. And once you put it into your calculator, on the left, you do 18.75 minus 4.95. You should get $13.80. So now we did the subtraction and addition. We have to do any multiplication and division. So here, the variable is being multiplied by 0.05. The opposite is to divide by 0.05. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So 13.80 divided by 0.05. These cancel. And what you're left with here on the left is, when you solve this, is 276 is equal to m. So the number of minutes he talked in long distance calls was 276 minutes in the month. So let's plug it in and check our answer. On the left side, we had 18.75. And on the right, we had 0.05 times the variable, which m we said was 276, plus 4.95. So 276 times 0.05 is 13.8 or 13.80 if you put it in your calculator. And then 13.80 plus 4.95 is 1875, which means that our left side does equal our right side and our answer is correct. So he spoke for 276 minutes. That's your final answer. Okay, I want you guys to try the last one on your own. So pause the video, try out this word problem. It's the same idea, and then you can come back and check your answer. All right, guys, so for this question, the number of minutes you should have gotten was 370. And this is the original equation that you should have set up. Your homework or your assignment, page 311 of your textbook. Please make sure you do it. All of these questions that are assigned. So 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 23, 28A, 29A, and 31. In addition to those questions, there's also in your books some extra practice for sections 8.1 and 8.2 together. So please work on these and try them out. These are really good practice. It's 2 pages, really good practice with solving 1 and 2 step equations. All right, that's it for section 8.2. I will see you guys soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.